So if you want to state, where you're from, and maybe a couple of answers of what you learned last night, or if you weren't here last night, what stuck out about that video for you? Who can't take it into this? Like,
Louis, you're shook. We're all shook. We should be shook after watching that video. We're glitching. We're not working.
yes.
But you know what? If you're glitching, that means that it's hitting right with you, and that's what we want.
Mm, 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 mm. All right. So for those who are just joining us, I'm Louis, he, him, his. My co-host is Sydney. We're both from Advocates for Youth. This is day 2 from Cops Out of School. Divest from Police, invest in, in our young people, in ourselves, in our communities. So yesterday we had 4 great presenters, and today we'll have a panel of amazing speakers. And Sydney, what do you think? We jump right into the panel?
I think so. If our panelists are ready to go, if you want to do a little intro, and then we'll go ahead and get started.
All right, awesome. So the topic of tonight's panel is how we reinvest money spent on policing our students into programs that schools really need. Some of those programs are like counseling, arts program, health, and so on. So we're joined by Lindsay Farrell, a senior at Temple University. She co-founded Defund TUPD with friends after George Floyd's murder. And Lindsay is also a member of our Youth Activist Network as part of the student organizing team. So welcome, Lindsay. We also have Dominique Morgan, my good girlfriend, executive director of the country's largest prison abolishment organization, Black and Pink. And it is an amazing organization that does work with folks in prisons, folks who have just come out of prison, folks living with HIV, and Black and brown queer folks. So welcome, Dominique. And then we have Venetia Crawford, a community engagement specialist who works with young parents. So all 3 are doing very critical work in 3 different parts of our communities, but all those things intersect and connect. So welcome, Venetia, Dominique, and Lindsay.
Thank y'all for having me. Excited to be late, but I'm here, Lord.
All right, that's right. I forgot. So I totally forgot. I thought I'm so used to just doing intros that I forgot that I was like also doing the panel. My bad. Let me put that hat on. I know that I shared a little bit about, just one sentence about the overarching work that you do, but we know that this work has multiple components, requires different things from us, requires different things from our past, our talent. So I'm going to ask if you can tell us a little bit more about yourself. And we can start with Venetia, then we'll go to Lindsay, and then we will wrap this question up with Dominique. So Lindsay, Venetia, tell us a little bit about you and the work that you do.
Well, yeah, thank you. And it's Louis, right?
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for having me here, everyone. So as Louis said, my name is Venetia Crawford. A lot of people call me V for short. And I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. And so I'm the CEO of a social impact consulting firm, and we do community engagement consulting. We offer education and training and program development for community-focused initiatives. And a lot of our work, hi Sydney, a lot of our work really focus on systems change around the areas of early childhood development, mental health, community resilience, and economic development. And I'm also a mother of a beautiful 5-year-old little girl, and which really helped me be so committed to the work around young parents. So I'm really excited to be here with you all today.
Well, thank you. Thank you for taking time to be here with us. Lindsay, same question, a little bit about yourself and the work that you are doing.
Of course. Hi, I'm so excited to be here. My name is Lindsay. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm in the city of brotherly love here in Philadelphia. Um, Woo, Philly in the house. Okay, so a little bit about the work I've been doing. So I helped co-found Defund TUPD, a group of Temple University undergraduate, graduate, faculty, staff, Philadelphia community members, anyone who wants to get involved can, to help defund Temple University's police department. So we kind of formed after George Floyd's murder. We were a group of students for Bernie, kind of did a bunch of canvassing work for him. And we kind of realized through our own personal research that we needed to do more, honestly. The work really wasn't done. And so we started doing our own personal research, and we realized that Temple University has the largest private police force in the country, which is just insane to me. We have over 130 armed officers that patrol about like a 20 block radius. And within that 20 blocks, I don't know, I know y'all aren't familiar with North Philly, but there's an entire community situated in the off-campus life that's happened here. So there's like students like me, I'm in an off-campus apartment right now, but then my next door neighbor, they're community members that have lived here for the past 20 years, and they've kind of seen the gentrification that has happened here, like off campus at Temple. And so what we're doing is we're fighting to defund from the largest private police force in the nation and refund into our communities and refund into other things here at Temple that desperately need funding, like the counseling center, like Title IX, like the Gender, Sexuality, and Women's Studies Department. What's become very clear is that there's not enough funding. There's too much funding in the police department and not enough funding where it's necessary. So we're organizing together as a whole cohort of folks trying to defund from Temple's police department.
Awesome. Yeah, I lived right there on 15th and Susquehanna. And I know Temple Police is always around there, but I had no idea that they were the largest private, now it all makes sense.
It's
Wow.
nuts. It is nuts.
Yeah.
The gentrification and just harm they've caused within the North Philadelphia community, it's devastating.
Yeah, well, Lindsay, thank you for being here. Can't wait to find out more about the work that you're doing. Dominique Morgan from Black and Pink, if you can share a little bit about yourself and the work that you are doing with Black and Pink.
Thank y'all for having me. I identify as a Black trans woman who's also formerly incarcerated, slash system impacted. So at Black and Pink National, we talk about system impacted because it allows us to engage in our work on a macro level and take away this kind of dichotomy of, well, you were only in jail, well, you went to prison, well, you only did state time, well, you were with the feds. And it allows us to think about the people who are currently incarcerated, their children, their families, the neighborhood, the grocery store that they spent $3 at every day to get their coffee that is missing them while they're gone. It allows us to talk about the impact of mass incarceration in a deep way. Born and raised here in Omaha, Nebraska. I am here in Omaha right now. And I'm coming up on January 22nd, 3 years of being the ED here at Black and Pink. This is our 16th year as an organization. We were founded in Boston, Massachusetts in 2005 by Reverend Jason Leiden. And I also am the prodigal child of abolition. I did not identify as an abolitionist when I took this job. I spent a decade in the adult prison system, 18 months in solitary confinement, and 6 months of that 18 actually living on the death row gallery, and still had no sort of investment or engagement with this idea of I can do away with these systems that they've tried to give me, and that I can center my potential greatness and the greatness of others on each other. And so now, as a self-identified abolitionist, here at Black and Pink, I'm trying to weave all those things together. I come from a public health background as a sexual health educator. And as a kid from the Midwest, we didn't grow up where you walk outside and the girls were giving protests, you know. Even this summer when we did have protests, when those girls sent a text message to be in the house at 8 o'clock, baby, you could eat off of these streets at 8:15. So it's very much a culture of Black folks being deeply oppressed by white people. And so to have Black and Pink in Omaha now, to be able to engage in catalyst work is awesome. And at Black and Pink, at the foundation, what we do is make sure that we push everybody into a space where they can go past resilience, where everyone can have access to a world, to a culture, to the things that they believe is going to make them thrive. And for some people, it's getting them out of jail. For some people, it's a job. And for some people, it's just that we sit down and we talk to them and everything in between. So thank y'all for having me. Y'all know I live for advocates. And I just forgot that it was 6:30 Eastern, child. I was driving around about to give me a sickening sandwich. And I said, let me get home and get in front of these lights.
So as y'all see, we have an amazing panel tonight. You know, we're talking about working with young parents, working with system impacted folks, and even how gentrification and student organizing, how all those things connect. So the first question I have, yesterday we had some of our conversation with two of our young facilitators was connecting some of the abolishment work with reproductive justice. So I kind of want to just ask whoever feels compelled to answer, like, how do you see movement for abolish and reproductive justice as connected? Like, where do they connect for you? Where do you see the connections between, you know, abolishing and reproductive justice? And whoever wants to jump in can jump in.
I think from a space of reproductive justice, when I came into this job at Black and Pink, what excited me was coming from that repro world and recognizing that some of the staunchest advocates I had ever met were people who cared about reproductive justice. You'll see these 70, 80-year-old white women that will, you know, march for Planned Parenthood, and they've been marching since they were 15. And I was like, I need those girls over here. I need people fighting for liberation of incarcerated people consecutively for 50, 60 years and telling their children about it and developing values in their home based on that. I think there needs to be some dismantlement in reproductive justice and in the reproductive health world before they really can lean into the greatness they could bring and the impact they could have on a mission of abolition. Because the girls are radical to an extent. And unfortunately in nonprofit, many people can only be as radical as a grant will allow them to be. And so I don't have a supervisor, so I'm gonna say what I want to say. So, and so I think that it's a yes, and it's like they really can be impactful, and I believe they absolutely have a place, because when you look at system impacted people, right? Because I also say to folks, and Louis, I've said this to you before, if we close all the jails today, where are we gonna house the girls? If we close all the jails today, y'all gonna make sure they get the HIV meds? If we close all the jails today, who gonna feed them, right? So we still haven't addressed the issues that created this culture of mass incarceration. So it's very much a yes and for me. And in that, it is the reproductive health, being out and being in the community. My medical transition started in March of this year. I was what many people would look at as successful and had nothing to feel like there was a loss. Reproductive health drastically amplified the value of my life in the last 12 months, almost 12 years post-incarceration, right? But I also have the privilege and access to understand how to navigate reproductive health. So if we can do some work over there with the girls divesting from a lot of the things that make them privileged, they could really come into this house and this spirit of abolition, and we could do some really festive things.
I'd love to add to that. Yeah, so Dominique, I have some hope for you here in Philly, we're actually, at least I'd like to think I'm actually starting to do some of that work. So I'm closely affiliated with the Planned Parenthood branch here in Philadelphia. And we actually started up a Gen Action chapter that is organizing like young Temple University students to be abolitionists, if I'm being honest with you. So I'm situated in this unique perspective in that I'm president of this group. I've interned with Planned Parenthood. I've seen firsthand a lot of what you're talking about these white women kind of showing up consistently for reproductive health, but not showing up for reproductive justice. That was one of the first things I learned when I interned with Planned Parenthood, actually, was that reproductive health and reproductive justice are two very different things. And we need to figure out how to bring them together and then pull in all of the other things like abolition into the work, and like a bunch of other different aspects into the work. And so when I am like operating as president of Gen Action TU, I work through the abolitionist perspective of we need to be talking about police divestment. We need to be talking about reallocating all these different funds to like Title IX. We only have one Title IX coordinator, and 9 times out of 10, they just don't get involved with cases, and they just send the cases straight to the dean of students, and then the dean of students does whatever they want with it. And so I wanted to just add that we're starting to get some serious work done here in Philly, but obviously it needs to become a larger conversation, which it starts, I think, with having it in these communities. And to just address your question, Louie, about how does reproductive justice and abolition align? I think a lot of it starts with what Dominique mentioned, and a lot of it has to do with just actual bodily autonomy. You know, when you look at cops, and you look at how cops actually handle sexual assault cases, how they handle anything to do with like reproductive health or reproductive justice cases, a lot of the times either the cases get thrown out, don't get addressed, or the victims that experience this trauma don't get the resources and care that they need. And so it looks like having those conversations to develop those resources so that the most marginalized, directly impacted by police brutality, directly impacted by incarceration, are being taken care of.
I just want to say I'm obsessed with Dominique and Lindsay. Like I could listen to them talk all day. But I do want to share perspective from young parents, since I work with them so closely. And young parents, we define that by 18 to 24. So not teens, but just a little bit older, because that's a demographic when we did this whole national study that no one was paying attention to. And, 18 is still really young to have a child. You're still trying to figure yourself out. You're transitioning from adulthood to, from being a teenager to adulthood. There's all of these responsibilities. And when you have a child at that age, just like, as a teen, you're still trying to figure things out, grow up yourself while raising a child. And I personally believe all of this work around or lack of work around reproductive justice, I'm a repeat what Dominique and Lindsay said, there is a lot of women, white women in particular, that believe that they had the solution. And I remember being in a meeting and a woman said, if we just made it mandatory for children or for young women to be on birth control, then we wouldn't have so many children being raped and having babies when they get raped. And a part of me just wanted to, smack her around a little bit, if I can say that.
But we got bail support.
I might need it.
But I'll text you my number because she needed her ass whooped. Excuse me, Deb. I know you on this call, but girl, that's a mess.
Yeah, it's a mess to know that is the mind. Look at Deb. That is the mindset of people out here who call themselves advocates and people who care for the community. Number one, and I'm sorry, you might hear some leaf blowing and vacuuming around here, but there is a lack of empathy. There is the lack of respect for another human being to make the decisions that they choose to make. And if, Deb's comment, but if a person decides or find themselves in a situation where they are birthing a child, the solution is not to as we have said earlier, I think someone said it, punish them or make them feel bad, or, you know, make them feel shame or guilt for their situation. It's really to, you know, identify what supports do they need, you know, to be a successful parent, so their child can be a successful and responsible adult. And so when I think about abolition and reproductive justice, I believe that the abolition, I know it is, you know, the act of abolishing, you know, a system or a practice or whatever, but there's a mindset that also needs to be abolished. My body is none of your business, right? What I choose to do is none of your business. And I also feel that, you know, women in general I've watched some of my colleagues have to explain 3 and 4 and 5 times what's going to happen when they go on maternity leave, right? And then we also have to consider, you know, fathers who don't even get paternity leave, right? You know, so I think that there has to be a huge movement and wave around changing people's understanding about what they feel their right is. You know, your right is to be who you are, but your right is not to tell someone else who they can be and how they should be. And I'll say this last thing, and I'll shut up. I talk with lots of, you know, folks in the community that don't look like me. Most of them are white women in these nonprofit spaces and philanthropy spaces, and there's a reason for that, but we won't go down that road. And I remember a white woman told me, and she was very honest. She said that the problem is white people just want to make Black people or people of color more like them. So when you do the thing that's normal in your community or your culture, and that's foreign to us, we say, no, you shouldn't do that. You should do this. You should have a plan before you have a child. You should wear condoms. Well, folks ain't even wearing masks. So, you know, so it's this entitlement to say that what we do is normal, and we need to just make you all more normal like us and how we think. And I'm not saying this is all white people, but this is deeply embedded into community work. And until that is addressed, we're going to be chasing our tails. And that's why I made my face, Dominique, when you said the grant restricts you, because it is so true that the grant will restrict folks from doing real work. So I'll stop because I'll keep going.
My good sis, one last because also what I recognize happens in these spaces is like the foolishness and shenanigans of whiteness, yes, but the foolishness and shenanigans that happens to folks when they get that good proximity to whiteness. So not only are these white folks perpetuating that norm, trying to minimize and invalidate other folks. What I saw in the reproductive space is that Black folks, brown folks that inch towards those roles became the stewards of harming our people through trying to perpetuate these norms. So I think that's, you know, if I can count the number of Black women who were just like, oh, you know, you just need to talk to them about condoms. I'm like, sis, you don't use condoms. Why? Oh, okay. So you don't think that they found that thing that you found. Like there has to be a different approach. So I think we also need to be aware that as much as we want to succeed in our careers, I've recognized the more you succeed in a career as a Black person, as a queer person, as a brown person, the closer you are going to be near the flames of white supremacy. Let me just stand in my stuff right now. What I know to be true, and I was going to phrase it around reproductive health. No, if you are, the higher you go into anything you're doing, you are sitting at the nexus of white supremacy. And people, you stay woke really, but it really is, it's exhausting because I'm questioning every day, like, did I do that? Would I have done that like 6 years ago? Did I do that because of my privilege and access? And it's exhausting, but it's necessary for me to maintain the type of person I want to be with community. But that's important too. Just to, because I feel like in these things, the Black folks and the brown folks just sit back and they go just type in the chat, no, beloved, you got work too, niece. So we all in this together. I mean, white folks got more work, but I'm just saying we got we got work together.
Yes. You know, I've been doing, you know, yeah, the mindset of abolition is something that I'm always unpacking. Because I was associated as a young person who experienced great harm through the AIDS and crack epidemic of the 80s and 90s, which got me into doing youth organizing, right? And in the 90s and early 2000s. And a lot of the protections around the conversations around policy and unpacking laws or undoing laws was through the context of protecting young people. So when I became a parent, and my son is, just turned 18, Black young man. I have spent at least the last 8 years unpacking or disconnecting abolishment and protection, because protection meant laws, it meant punishment, right? Because that's the context. If we had this law, if this rule was in place, if this punishment was in place, then I would feel safe. I will feel safe as a parent. I will feel safe as a youth organizer. I will feel safe as a person. So there is a lot of unpacking that we have to do as well. So my next question is how does your work connect or support young people? With everything that we talked about, like how do you approach the work in supporting young people, who are, a lot of times at the margins and at the closest to harm, particularly by police? And we can start with Venetia, Lindsay, and then we'll wrap it up with Dominique.
Yeah. I tell people that there's no real difference between us and youth. It's just adults are children that have been here longer. It's just that simple. We are still trying to figure our own selves out. We have trouble with the same type of, managing our emotions just like our children do. And the difference is we have a duty to support children, right? We're adults. We have a duty to support children. We have a duty to support each other. And so the work that I do is I create access to youth voices. I say all the time, and this is, and I'm known to kind of rub some folks the wrong way, and that's okay. I have no problem doing that. But if you've made a decision regarding a certain group of people and have not engaged them, you have already made the wrong decision. And I can guarantee you that there's so many decisions being made on the behalf of youth. Some may say that it's to protect them, like putting, what do you call the things? Metal detectors in the schools or having police officers in the school. This is to protect you. But did you ask the child what they would need to feel safe? What protection feels like to them? And if adults actually ask that question, I guarantee you 100% that no child would say, I need a metal detector and I need a police officer right here. It's not going to happen. And a lot of times I did a lot of work with the police department here in Charlotte, and they had two different programs, and I'll speak on just one, but this was their youth diversion program, and children as young as 6 could be in this program, and it's because they have a misdemeanor charge, right? The majority of these students came from schools, 6 years old, and you're getting charged and you're already in the criminal justice system. No one for a second is thinking about the impact that will have on his or her entire life, right? At 6 years old, a child, they could have been having a temper tantrum. And so how we deal with children and youth tells a lot about who we are as who we are as adults. If you think to call a police officer every single time a child challenges you, or a child is aggravated and raises their voice, or if they do something that you don't like, and your first thought is to incorporate someone with a weapon, then to me, you're in the wrong position. And also, it makes me feel that you're lazy. that you don't want to do the work to actually engage and understand and get this child back to a place where they can learn, because that's what they're there for. So my work is really focused around stop making decisions about folks that you haven't talked to, that you haven't engaged with. It has to be a shift in how we make decisions, and it has to be inclusive decision making, which is something that I fully advocate for.
Yeah, I don't even know where to begin. All of that was just fantastic. I think I'm unique in that I'm 21 and I remember what it was like to be 13. I remember what it was like to be 10. And I remember just always asking myself, why, well, what do you mean? Why are there metal detectors? Like, why do I have to walk through a metal detector? Or why does my friend have to walk through a metal detector to get, like, just go sit in a classroom? Why is there only one guidance counselor for a school of like thousands? I remember asking all these different questions, and actually one of my professors here at Temple gave me the best piece of advice I think I will keep with me for the rest of my life. And that was, when I have kids, or if I have kids, or any kind of young person I'm dealing with, do not forget how you felt when you were that age. Do not forget how you felt, what you experienced, what you kind of um, were when you were that age, because that helps create that bridge of empathy that I think Venetia was talking about, was that you need to be having these conversations with young folks. You can't just be saying, oh, we're gonna have like 4 officers stationed at the front of the school. They're gonna walk through a metal detector. They're gonna go and sit in classrooms. And if a kid acts out, well, that we're just gonna call the cops on them. And a lot of what I think Venetia was also talking about was just the transformative justice aspect of it all. Of, you need to actually center the people that are impacted in these conversations. And so when you're talking about things like abolition, when you're talking about getting cops out of school, you need to talk to the students who are engaging with the cops on a daily basis. You need to be talking to the students about what else they'd like to see done. If we get the cops out of school, who's going to protect you? What do you want to see be done? Not just say, oh, we're just gonna get rid of the cops, but like we'll still have people on backup just in case. We need to be having these conversations with the young folks that are actually engaged and involved. Sorry if you can hear my dog. The last thing I'm gonna say too is at Temple, they have a long history of just completely dismissing students and their needs. There was a case that got turned over to the Philadelphia Police Department from TUPD without the consent of the person who the case like was involving. And the PPD showed up to their dorm, and like they got a call and they were like, hey, you need to come down to the station. And they vocally, actively were like, no, I don't want to do anything about this. And they still had to go and sit and go through this arduous process of complete BS. And like, the reality is, if they said they don't want to do anything to pursue the case further, you need to leave it at that. You need to be talking to the people who are directly impacted by these situations.
At Black and Pink, the youth space is actually evolving. I brought that because I went into group homes and foster care at like 12 years old. And my approach to running this agency is positioning us to where we don't have to be so reactive. As an emotional Pisces, when I'm reactive, I can get things done, but I'm not making sure I'm covering all my bases. And if I'm trying to do away with a system that was intentionally made to kill me and my people, I need to be ready to hit all corners. And so to do that, I need to be proactive. And so as an agency, we need to be addressing the impact of mass incarceration on young people, whether it's directly or indirectly. And those words are starting to get on. Y'all ever have words that happen in the year and then you're finally like, well, what do y'all mean when y'all say that? You know what I'm saying? Like, what's the gauge for the indirectness of it, right? Loss is loss, harm is harm. And so So like as in our service delivery, that's evolving. We are walking into a capital campaign to build what we're calling the Opportunity Campus here in Omaha, Nebraska, that will serve the entire country. Vernisha, you spoke to my spirit, and I'm gonna be in your inbox bothering you because we're looking at the needs of LGBTQ plus youth who are 18 to 24, who can't go on the Trevor Project posters, girl, who the girls don't want to do a GoFundMe for, that as soon as they turn 18, the foster parent pushes them out and takes their cell phone, and you have these babies who are just, the system has robbed them from the opportunity of engaging in autonomy and using choice. And then at 18, they're like, figure it out. Right. So that's what we're diving into. Our director of programs, Andrew Alleman, is a social worker and a therapist and an incredible queer Black man. I've brought on an additional full-time therapist to our national team to look at our well-being and wellness initiative, and just hired a incredible our coordinator for advocacy is like done incredible work around reproductive justice with young people and our adolescent health project here in Omaha. So that's the organizational stuff. The thing that I'm going to say to the adults, I think I would guess between the three of us on the panel, I'll be 39 in March. So I think I'm the oldest from, like, we get into that older space where we start to be very condescending to young people. And we, even when we try to, the effort to be inclusive is dismissive of the power of young people. And I want to say to you all, you need to make sure and challenge yourself to not only be comfortable with youth leadership, but be excited to be led by young people. Because what I can tell you as someone who has been positioned to lead, I can lead somebody all day, but when somebody wants to be led by me, it hits different. And we have to also dismantle and abolish, going back to what Sister Nisha said earlier about, we're not just dismantling system, we're dismantling thought processes of, we've lived 4 years with the understanding that you don't have to know a damn thing to be positioned as a leader. So also oftentimes as adults, we'll try to minimize the power of youth leadership because, well, they haven't experienced this or they haven't seen that. That's fine. That's fine. But that doesn't mean that they don't have they're not capable of leading, and they might be a better leader if you lean into their leadership. Right? Leader doesn't mean that you don't need support or aha moments or that people shouldn't challenge you. And so I think adults take that, oh, you want to be grown, hands off approach to young people in leadership. And they sit there with their Mr. Burn hands when these kids, when they, and not even fail, but things happen and they say, oh, y'all should have let me stay in there. No, you should have stood by these young folks and you should have supported their leadership and been really excited about how they're developing. So, and pay them. And stop paying these kids. A stipend is not a coin. It's not, say it with me, a stipend is not a coin. Give these kids y'all so worried about these kids filing taxes. How about you pay them enough to where they got to file taxes on it, and they'll let you know if that's a problem for them, niece. It's that money piece, because you can have all the advisory committees, you can do all the things, but I promise you that one of the best ways you can develop a person's understanding of the value of their time is by paying them for it. Now, the beauty of abolition is that once they get access, the children may choose to divest from it, but y'all always want somebody to divest from something they've never touched or never had. And so I think that's important as well when it comes to organizational leadership, engaging with young folks, because access breeds the idea that people should listen to you as well. And we should give them the arsenal of all the tools that they need to really lead and flourish in their leadership.
Yes, I'm gonna stay with you, Ms. Dominique, and then we're gonna go to Lindsay and then Vernisha. So if we divest funding from police, where would you like to see that funding reinvested? Or how would you expand the work that is already being done?
Well, I think like a practical answer is I want to see it invested in the things that we struggle to fund now. Healthcare for everyone, housing, not adequate housing. Oh, this is where I sleep. Homes for everyone, and people having access. And when we talk about abolition, I was on a panel maybe a few months ago where people, oh, we should a college education isn't about an abolition experience. Abolitionist experiences are whatever that person says they need to dismantle whatever barriers have been put in front of them. And for some people, it's a college degree, and for some people, it's a house. So I want it invested in the things that people dictate will prepare them. You know what it should look like? Come on, Lord, talk to me. These 80 yet. I want people, I want folks born. I want folks like their lived experience for that first 10 years, like funded to where they don't have to worry. Their parents minding their own damn business. Parents like support your children, but we don't want parents putting things on kids. And then like at 10 years old, 11 years old, I want a person to be able to sit down and be like, okay, what is your life? Like, what do you want? You want to go to school? What kind of career do you want to have? And then we be able to fund that. That's my dream, is that in that individual experience of what these funds are, because keep talking to me. The experience of incarceration is individual. It's no shade. The impact is community. The experience of incarceration, I've been in cells with people and I don't know what their time in the cell looks like. So I also struggle with this idea that, like, I think those resources for those essential needs, but we also really need to talk about, like, can we individualize how we reinvest the divestment funds, because it's on that same spectrum. And last but not least, it's not so much the money piece, but it's the people piece that I hear so many times. Folks like, well, we're gonna cut out policing. Well, what do the police officers do? Or the people who want to goop you, honey. Or what about the Black police officers? Listen, I promise you, the skills that you have can be used elsewhere. And I promise you that your ingenuity and the power that you possess can actually impact and benefit your community in a new way. I always ask people, like, what's your why? And not that Brene Brown question of what's your why. Like, girl, why are you here? Girl, why are you here? Why? Oh, I want to change the community. Well, tell me the last time you changed the community, because you've been a cop for 10 years. Oh, well, I volunteer on the weekends. I said, on the clock, when's the last time you changed the community? And like, and like pushing into that. So divestment and reinvestment of funds, but also I absolutely believe, and I'm excited about the idea of divestment of humans from these systems and investing them in other places where these humans might actually get to live out the goals and the life desires they have.
Ooh, yes. Yeah, so same question, Lindsay. If we divest from police, where could we reinvest that money? And I know that you're doing work on the Temple campus. And if they, begin, hopefully with all the work that you and your team is doing, if they how could you expand the work or the community on the campus if all of those resources, even some of those resources, were invested into student and young people?
Yeah, great question. I want to emphasize everything Dominique just said, because yes, everything she just said, yes. I'll do two separate answers. I'll answer the Temple part, and then I'll answer my own personal part, because while I think they do intersect, I think they're kind of individualistic perspectives that I kind of share both of. So Temple specifically, we're calling to divest from the police department and reinvest in things like Title IX, like the Tuttleman Counseling Center. Just speaking on personal experience, I went to the counseling center my sophomore year and got told I wasn't suicidal enough, so I needed to come back if I was actually about to kill myself. I'm sorry, I should have put a content warning on that. That is completely my bad. But it's the reality. That's the reality that a lot of students are facing right now, is that Temple just doesn't care It's as simple as that. I know folks who have been trying to access mental health resources, trying to navigate Zoom online school while also like working full time, because now that all their classes are online, they have more hours that they can work so they can actually survive and like meet their resources. And there's still absolutely nothing. So we want to divest from Temple's Police Department and reinvest in the counseling centers so that we can get more therapists on board so that students don't have to wait 6 months to be seen by someone. I'm sorry, it's a 6-week waiting period right now. We want to divest from the police department and reinvest in the gender, sexuality, and women's studies department and the Afroecology department and all of these other departments that are just underfunded and that are constantly having to lay off adjuncts because they can't keep up. They can't keep up with just how like one day they have funding, the next day they don't. One day they have more funding because they fought for it, and then the next day it's just gone. So we're trying to divest from Temple's police department and just reinvest in students, but also the community as well. Something that is insane to me is that they have I forget it's $180,000, I believe is what it is. No, I don't remember the actual numbers, but we had someone go through it and it would be enough to meet the community's needs and students' needs without a problem and without any kind of detriment to Temple. Temple would still be able to make money off of our tuition. They'd still be able to operate as a higher education institution. And so we want to also invest in the communities. Something that Dominique said, our North Philadelphia community, something that Dominique said that really hit home with me was that justice is also individualistic. What I need is not what someone else needs. And so we want to make sure that I can get my needs met, that I don't have to pay a lot of money for rent, that I have food, that I have water, that I can just get my basic resources met. But my basic resources don't look like my trans friends. They don't look like my non-binary friends, what they need. So we want to make sure that we can get their needs met as well through divesting from Temple's police and maybe having Temple open up like a scholarship of some sort or a grant used with all this different money so that students and young people don't actually have to be stressing about this. Last thing I'm going to say is paying young people as well. Something that I'm so grateful for advocates is that y'all are paying me to do some of this work. And I'm currently working 4 part-time jobs in addition to the student organizing team. And so like we need to be figuring out where this money can be coming from. And that starts with looking at our police department because they don't do any good at all.
Okay, Vernisha, same question. Excuse me. Where could the money be invested, or even with more funding, how could you expand the work that you are doing?
Mm-hmm. So this is a loaded question for me because, well, number one, the approach to de-invest just the police department makes me think about the fact that the police department is a federal or government agency. So what we really are doing is we want to reprioritize the funding that the federal government is releasing to its different departments. So I wouldn't exclude any other federal agency outside of this de-investment movement because the police department is not the only one that's misusing funds or having funds that are not being used to have the greatest impact. So I think before we even get to the point of de-investment, I fully and strongly believe that when you follow the money, you find out the truth. And people say, don't tell me what you do, show me how you spend your money, and then I'll know exactly what you do. I'll know exactly how you prioritize, your goals or, your missions, right? So I would want to know, first and foremost, where's the money going? Because I think if we say, hey, de-invest it from this specific thing, we could be actually selling ourselves short because we could, if we looked at the whole budget and say, all right, how is the city and the county, the federal, government, how are they spending money? Where is it actually going? And then when you identify that, because what we'll find is that is going to other organizations. So how is that organization managing those funds? And is it ever getting back to the actual community? And I know the answer to that already. The answer is no. What happens is money comes down from the federal government. It gets put in this pool of grants. Those grants go to organizations. The organizations hire staff to help the community. It never touches the community. What happens is we get stipends, but no one is building generational wealth. There's still inequities, right? So I believe that if we looked at where this money was going from a broader picture, because the police is definitely a target for sure, but there are more that we can de-invest from. Take that, put that into a flexible funds account, whatever that is. And I think Dominique said this, whatever barrier is existing, put it towards that, right? But the goal should be to make things equitable, not equal, but equitable, meaning going back to what Dominique and Lindsay said, that every experience is individual. I don't have although I'm Black, I may not have the same type of issues as my own sister, right? It's just completely different. And so if we were to, again, follow the money, pull that money up, put it into a flexible funds account, and here's where it gets really important. You put the community over dispersing those funds, right? Who's making the decisions to actually put this community out, put the money out into the community. You put the community over the funds. You have to have trusted leaders. The community will tell you who to trust, right? And so I think that we have to really think through this type of movement in particular, because what we don't want to do is to say, okay, let's say this all gets approved, we de-invest from the police. That money goes to mental health counseling and people are still not getting mental health services. What they'll say is, well, y'all were successful, we de-invested, we did what y'all said. So we have to look at, we want to make things equitable and accessible. And whoever makes those decisions, it needs to be the community. So that is a longer process, but it's the right process, because we can't duplicate, we can't try to change things in the same way things were created, right? Because then we are really just reinventing the problem. It just looks different, got a different name, and we'll find it somewhere else.
All right, I'm just gonna pack up because, all right, I'm gonna turn my lights off because that's a wrap, honey. Yes, all of that. So just so we can make sure that we have time for questions from our beautiful participants. The last question I'm gonna ask each and every one of you, since y'all are doing such amazing and powerful and innovative work, is how can folks get involved with the kind of work that you are doing? And we can start with Lindsay, Vernisha, and then we'll wrap it up with Dominique.
It starts with learning about other organizations in your city, you know, something that I think a lot about. My own personal experience started with, well, what's my fight in this? What do I have to offer? What do I have to contribute to local organizing around the city? And then I kind of reflected and I realized I'm a brown woman in an all-white family. My father was incarcerated. I experienced sexual trauma from a young age. And so I thought to myself, okay, Planned Parenthood offers some resources that I could get involved in. And then I just got involved with local Black and brown organizations in the city. And it just starts with just showing up. It was very intimidating for me at first to even bring myself to some of these meetings and some of these organizing spaces, because I really didn't think I had any say or any kind of impact in what happens and what these orgs are doing. But the reality is that's not the case. And it starts with just getting over that fear, because every single person has something to offer and to contribute. And so it just starts with finding your own personal stake with where you stand, and then finding an org that aligns with you, and then going from there. Because literally anything, absolutely anything can happen. If you want to get involved with abolition work, Movement Alliance Project does a lot of great stuff. Amistad Law does a lot of great stuff. And then just look to your local communities and see what else is happening. For abolition specific, Planned Parenthood, Juntos, there are a bunch of just other organizations that are constantly trying to fight for a better world. And so it just starts with finding your own personal stake and then going from there.
Renisha, how can folks get involved with the kind of work that you do?
So I would say, I would encourage you all to think about what is not being said, right? And write a list, because it's a long laundry list of things, right? If you think about an issue that you want to address, think about what people are not really considering first. I encourage everyone to read, to do some research, to read articles, to see what other folks have said, what they're doing. And because one of the things that I know to be true about this work is that because we are addressing and trying to dismantle and disrupt a system that's been around for a really, really, really long time, you got to come with confidence, because people will break you down. You will say something knowing that it's a fact, and people will make you feel like you're an idiot, that what you said is not valuable. And so I believe that before you decide to jump into this work, knee deep or head first, you got to prep yourself for what you're really about to experience. This work is not for the weak. It's really not. You have to be so strong in the mission, the end result. The process is weary, it's leery, it's rainy, it's ugly, it's lonely, it's dark, and it's cold. But if you can prep yourself and understand that this is what you're up against, feel your, I like to say, it's kind of like you have someone in construction with a toolbox, right? They got a hammer, they got nails, they got a drill, they got all of these things for when something happens, they have the tool that they need to fix this issue or problem. And so I think a large part of this work is us putting more tools into our toolbox. It's also connecting with folks on this call and people like myself, Dominique and Lindsay, and asking those questions and building those relationships with us for when something goes wrong, for when you feel discouraged, like you want to quit, for when you feel so offended by the things that you hear and you see, because you need that support, that community of support around you to do this work. And we will lead you, we will guide you, right? But it can't happen alone. So you need to spend some time preparing yourself, getting those tools in your toolbox, building your network of supporters. So when you get out there and go and then do what Lindsay said, you will be more successful and you'll have a little bit more longevity into this work, because people burn out. People say, you know what? I've been at this for 5 years, nothing has changed, and they quit. But I heard this, and this is so true. You can work so hard and not see any results for 4 years. And in that 5th year, everything changes. So this work, you got to stay in there. You got to get in there. And the only way that you can do that is having that support of people around you and tools in your toolbox.
Thank you. Dominique, how can people get involved with the work that you are doing?
Well, before I just say that, I'm going to say, know why you want to get in the work. Like, you are not going to heal yourself by doing this work. You do not heal yourself by healing others. Don't let somebody lie to you. It didn't work when it was with your boyfriend. It's not going to work when you're getting paid for it, niece. You do not fix somebody else's and have an outdate, because what Renisha said, it's lonely. And many of us, we have such tight relationships. Well, I mean, we have these friendships because we're friends, but also there's things we can say to each other that even our partners won't understand, right? There is when it's us together, that's the only time we don't have to look over our shoulder, or we have to reinterpret what we said, or feel like we have to be this perfection of what this community thing is, and that's rare. I say that because COVID last year made me realize how much safety I found in the people who are my friends and have become my family in this work. And it made me sad for the people that I know that don't have that. I know a lot of people who've been to work for 20, 30 years that don't have that. And that is what makes these girls bitter, angry. And you walk into the work, you're like, girl, it's 8 a.m. Why you mad? Because nobody sent them a text with the most inappropriate meme last night. And you know what I'm saying? Or their good girlfriend, the news that new album didn't come out and they was at the same time, girl, you got it yet? You got it yet? So I just want to say, build your community, but also like know why and know when you're ready to get out. I came into my job thinking about, when is it time for me to leave Black and Pink? Why am I here? What are my goals in my work? So I just want to say that. I've made $100 in a day waiting tables, and I made $100 in an hour doing advocacy work. The coin is cute, but what I can tell you, I left that job waiting tables and I didn't think about a damn body when I clocked out. My after time was mine, especially for Black and brown folks, queer folks. Save some of you for you. So I just want to say that I love my work, but I get tired of these people. And when I say people, I mean, you are of service to the community, and community isn't 8 to 5. It's 4 a.m. I need to go do bail support. There's been nights that I've been up all night sitting at the jail, getting someone out of the jail, and I still got to be on that Zoom call, or that funder sends, hey, do you have a minute? AKA, I want to talk to you right now. Girl, you don't care if I got a minute. You want my time, right? And what holds me still is my community, my safe spaces like Louie and my good Judy's, and knowing that I know when I am dedicated to knowing when it's time for me to go. Okay, Auntie just wanted to give y'all that, because nobody said that to me when I was chasing. I remember I was like, I'll just pour the coffee, and no one said, please know why you want to be up in that space. Because if I would have gotten this job at another nonprofit, same job, same pay and all that, it'd have been cute, but I wouldn't be thriving as a human being the way I was meant to be the ED of Black and Pink. Okay. So just be tuned into that. How do you get involved in Black and Pink? I'm honored to say that we have some pretty open avenues for how people can engage. So we have about 21,000 incarcerated people that's on our database. And so we have a Black and Pink pen pal program. And the goal is to create these reciprocal relationships with folks who are community-based, with folks who are currently incarcerated. And I tell folks all the time, there are some folks who are like, yo, like, either I'm not ready for that sort of long relationship, or, it makes me cackle that we can send 20 emails a day, but someone having to think they could send one letter a week, they feel like it's too much to handle, but I digress. But there's ways that you can reach out to Black and Pink and say, hey, I have a group of friends that are hanging out this weekend. Can we get a list of 20 people? And you can send them cards and you can send them affirmations, and you can use our national office address as our return address. So you can still engage with these folks, and you can say, you know what, maybe I'm not ready for the long-term pen pal. So don't let that stop you from reaching out to us. Next is that we have chapters. So we have about 11 chapters across the country, and in the next 60 days, we are about to look at the list of folks who apply to start new chapters. So if you're in a city where there's not a Black and Pink chapter and you're sickening, Lindsay, you need to be sending an email to David at blackandpink.org. David, Lord, today I don't use their last name so much. You ever talk to somebody first name so much you don't know what their last name is? But David is the deputy director of Black and Pink and overseeing the chapter expansion, and so we're ready. But come correct. So the what we're saying is, if it's 3 white people applying, go home. We're not doing inclusion retroactively. inclusion will not be an afterthought. System impacted people, if you're not already organizing with system impacted people, then you don't need to be starting a Black and Pink chapter because you're not there yet. There's no shade that you're not there yet, but you're not there for a chapter yet. But chapters are beautiful because chapters are on the ground. I have to take a national approach, but I don't know what's happening in Philly. You know, I don't know what the Temple Police even look like, what their uniform is. Chapters are important because y'all get us on the ground. And last but not least, we're really engaging in an advisory committee that's going to launch in the next 60 days as well. So people who are in the community who are like, yo, I'm not ready to launch a chapter. I didn't apply to be a Black and Pink board member, so on and so forth, but you really want to impact our approach to our work. We're building an advisory committee where we're paying the girls, and that's going to be really important for people to apply for that. Outside of like positions, engage in our social media. I'm proud to say that our social media is like engaging. It's active. There's an abolitionist book series that gets tweeted out and pushed out once a week. There are questions and engagement from incarcerated people that comes through social media. There are days when social media will curate responses that go in the Black and Pink newsletter that goes inside to 20,000 people. So our social media is something that's really exciting. So our Instagram and our Twitter and our Facebook, follow those spaces, and anything new that pops up that's an opportunity will be shared there first and foremost. And last but not least, take care of yourself, because if you taking care of you, that's one less person I got to make sure I take care of. So you want to engage, yeah, no shade, but no, for real, but like the duality of it all. Like, I want you to take care of you for you, but also all the time I'm like, the more folks take care of themselves, the more that I know that that's because a part of the work that's heavy is that I go to sleep every night. There's 20,000 people who are waiting for me to get up and figure out what I'm going to do. There's this many kids who are homeless that need housing. What am I going to do? And so the more of us that take care of ourselves, the more of us that take care of each other, because that's powerful as well, that lightens the load of Black and Pink. So continue to take care of yourself, but also don't wait to reach out to Black and Pink until you're in dire straits. You know, hit us up if you just got a phone bill to pay. Now, not if you need long distance to call that boy that you don't need to be talking to anyway, but hit us up when you are in that. Our service approach does not make people validate their poverty for us to show up for them. We released about $100,000 in COVID funds through Cash App. And it was a cable bill, it was a phone bill, it was rent, it was, I just need to get my nails done. So that whole wellness. So take care of yourself. Do that. If none of the other things speak to you, take care of you every day, and I promise that'll be a weight lifted off of me. Ashe.
Ashe. Yes, and I just submitted a piece for the newsletter. So you let me know when that is ready for me to share, because I'm excited. You know, try to get through all of the medias.
Was it for the HIV issue?
Yes.
So she just went to print. So we'll make sure you get those. So I will have Dusty send that over. But that issue is sickening, y'all. And we just released our award winners. Dana's in there and Tommy. So please get into the things. Also, Louis, send me that sweater.
This is the sweater I had. Remember when we went to go see Patti LaBelle?
Oh, I'm aware. That's Miss Patti LaBelle's sweater when you with that panoramic photo, but I still need parts.
Yes. It has been an absolute joy. Thank you, Vernisha, Lindsay, and Dominique. You have no idea how you have shined a light, not just on our experiences, our past, our work, the work that has been done, the work that we are doing, the work that we are going to do, but also the new world that we are building, because we solely deserve it. So thank you for sharing your genius with us. And we can take, for the next 5 minutes, take 1 or 2 questions from participants. So if you have a question you want to ask one or if all of the panelists, you can share them in the chat. Or I'm not sure if folks can unmic. Maybe you want the panelists to hear your voice. That is also a beautiful thing as well, but also dropping it in the chat if you have a question for a specific panelist. Whew. I think we're going to need to start a Google Doc because I cannot facilitate a panel and take notes. And although my brain is saying that I'm going to remember everything, I know that I'm not.
Listen, Rev will send you the transcript though.
Mm.
I saw a bill for that. I said, girl, what is Rev, girl? That's one of the sites that my staff, not my staff on the sites, honey, at work, and found out it was a transcription service. Won't he do it? So y'all recording via Rev right now. So I'll get you that.
All right, so it says folks can turn their mics on if they need. So if there are no questions, folks, the panelists have also dropped their Twitter, their social media handles. Please follow them, support their work, amplify, reshare their work, so that folks who may not be on this call tonight are able to get access to this information and also get access to the work that is happening. So if at any moment they decide they're ready to get into this work, to support this work, they have access to these geniuses as well. So want to thank you all again. There was Louis before this panel, and now there's Louis after this panel. And I thank y'all because, I'm a better parent. Every time I go through something like this, I'm transformed and I get to show up more intentionally and more lovingly for not just my son, but also the young people I work with. So it is with that, I thank you all. So thank you, folks, give them a round of applause. Oh, we do have a question before we wrap up this section. If I want to start doing the Pen Pal program, should I go to the Black and Pink website to get involved?
Yes, go to the Black and Pink website, and then it's going to take you to our Pen Pal app. So we invested almost $20,000 to develop an application that is going to help you connect to our Pen Pals, and it's new and it just launched like the second week of December. So check it out and go there and find it. And if you have any issues, at me, and I'll get you right together.
For Dominique, is there a minimum age requirement to be a pen pal?
You know what? This is one of them times when I say you don't have to know everything to lead. I would say that legal standards in Nebraska 19, everyone else 18. However, what I do know that we've done to if folks are younger than 18 is when they've had someone get a list and they're not doing like consistent exchanges with inside members. So so folks who are under 18 are sending messages, sending affirmations and engaging in engagement, but you have an and just for this conversation, I'm gonna use adult, right? That's helping them facilitate it. And then the inside members are returning mail to us instead of, that. I think that's the biggest concern that I'm sure insurance would bring up to me. Yeah. But also talk to your parents. Like, I think that's another thing. Like if we're talking about cultural change, if they're interested in that, talk to a trusted adult. And if they can do it with you, that is something that I think would be good as well.
Awesome. Go ahead, Dominique.
Sorry, because I always feel bad about this conversation, but I also will say that everybody knows someone who's been incarcerated or system impacted. That is like in your personal world. So if maybe you're not appropriate age to use our database or use our system, I will challenge you to reach out to people you went to school with. That kid that disappeared a couple of weeks ago, he's probably in juvie because of the way the system works. Or that, or an uncle or an auntie or something like that, or anyone who's system impacted. If you can't use our system, you can still reach into these facilities and let people know they're loved and cared about. So I would say that look into your personal world of people who you love and care about who are currently incarcerated that you can communicate with to make sure that you still get that experience that you deserve. And sometimes just our laws make it icky for us to support everyone in doing that at certain times. Sorry, y'all.
No, yes, thank you for that. Because when my son was in juvie, the shame that I had to deal with, but also like asking for community members to show up. And there were people that I didn't even know who helped support me and my son through that process. So yeah, there's always opportunities to get into this work in all the ways that you can. So thank you for uplifting that, Dominique, because parents like myself who felt alone, Dominique, supported me through that process. But opening up and understanding that the work is also supporting the parent. It's not just organizing and doing direct action. It's like really being there for the parent so the parent can be there for their child. And I would be indebted to Dominique and all those people who supported me through that process. So thank you all once again for sharing time and space with us. And I'm going to turn it over to Sydney.